Hey guys, Sullivan Owen here in Philadelphia. If you have watched any of my holiday decor, you might know that I do a lot of stuff with ornaments, including making ornament garlands and big flowing constellations of ornaments. So if you would like to see how to make this, stay tuned. Okay, so first we're going to use an assortment of sizes. I wouldn't do anything too large for your first garland. The larger ornaments take some special, I have one put aside to show you kind of how to attach those. But so I'm using mostly the 3 to 6 inch variety. I have mostly burgundy and then a few olive green, shiny, and matte. And I think all the burgundy are matte. Last year, my holiday decor was inspired by kitchen colors of the 1970s. So kind of olive tones, avocado, mauve, pink. I know it sounds a little strange, but it did look really cool. Here are some photos of what I did last year. And this year, I'm sort of separating some of the darker tones out for other projects and adding in a little bit more pastel. So the ornaments that I use are from Vickerman. They are a wholesale company to designers, but I did find out that they are selling some of their products through Wayfair. So I'll put links below. I don't know how affordable that is in comparison to maybe like a dollar store or thrifting or things like that, but I would say that if you plan to start this, I would start with an edited color palette. There is no need to go to try and collect 7 or 8 different colors, because to do a really large garland, you need a lot of ornaments. And let's get started. Besides the ornaments, you need wire cutters. And I'm going to use this fine gauge silver wire. You could also use green floral wire depending on where you're planning on attaching the ornaments. So I'm going to start by taking a pretty long piece of wire off of the spool. And I'm very glad we're able to do this video and I have the 3 camera angles working, because I got some feedback from a very vocal person that watches my videos, Dad. So I'm going to start by taking a pretty large, one of the larger ornaments. And I've used these outside before, so they do show a little wear and tear, but so if you're using on a Christmas tree, you might want to use the nicest ones, but since they're going back outside and these, or I'm not sure where these are going to end up yet, but I am putting the ornament on my wire, and then I am just twisting. And this will allow it won't move. It won't move on the wire strand, but I'm gonna leave some some space between the next one. So when I first came up with this ornament constellation for a client's house. And I thought of it after having done a very large balloon installation. And I did originally think like, hey, wouldn't it be cool to turn giant balloons into huge ornaments? And I still may someday experiment with that. But after, some of the ornaments have these green wires, some don't. I am trying to keep them when I can, because who knows where these will end up. But for now, I'm just winding them around if they're there. And same thing, we're just gonna go through the top of the ornament hook, down the string. And rather than, so here, okay, so I had done this wedding for great clients, Andrea and Matt, who had a really cool wedding. Everything was kind of inspired by a vintage circus. So we did this huge balloon constellation that was inspired by a balloon installation artist who goes by, her company name is Geronimo. And she sort of pioneered these giant balloon installations. So I did my take on it. I use a lot more color, variety. So I did my interpretation of this kind of like floating balloon, and then we added some geometric shapes and things like that. So having just completed that wedding, I then was thinking about this client who wanted to do this like little grove of Christmas trees, and then we couldn't really invest in 3 colors of ornaments the first year because they do add up. So we did just red, burgundy, and like cherry red. And that was my first experience working with all of these materials. And I really, really enjoyed it. But the first thing I learned was you're gonna go through a million times more ornaments if you go right on top of each other. So I'm leaving some space. And this is really similar, this is really based on how you put balloons together. It was just a little bit of trial and error. When you do balloon work, you usually tie 2 balloons together and then you use monofilament fishing line, clear fishing line to attach them together, and you can kind of shape them and mush them into place. So that's really where this was from. And I realized really quickly when I was doing my first project with lots of ornaments that if I was putting them too close together, they started popping each other off, because when you pull tight, there's tension. So by leaving anywhere from 1 to 3 inches between, and you really don't have to do anything other than pinch and twist. And rather than try to make one full wire garland, I would suggest making 2 to 3 of these strands with an assortment of sizes and kind of playing with color. And you want to leave a little space for the larger guys, because when we're attaching them to whatever our support's going to be, we're going to want this space. Now I just got it. Oh, there we go. So you're going to want that space to allow you to kind of pinch and style, and using a really fine gauge wire lets you have like a lot more control. I feel like if you did this with fishing line, it wouldn't have any support. Really the thing that's going to give your piece integrity, besides using flexible wire, is whatever you're attaching it to. I think this piece I'm just going to sort of style to a couple pieces of evergreen, but you want to build a support in whatever shape. So the red ornament kind of spiral around the grove of Christmas trees, that was done with some electrical conduit that is pretty heavy duty and able to support the weight and maintain some like kind of elegant curves. Some of the other ones I've done, like, so here's my house last year. As I mentioned, I have used these before. That's why you want to use shatterproof. And this one, it looks like it has popped off, and rather than try to glue it back on, I'm just gonna cut the wire. And the nice thing about at least the Vickerman Company's ornaments is that for the larger sizes, they are drilled. You can actually thread your fine wire right through the pre-drilled holes if you happen to lose a top. And I don't really mind not having the ornament collar. I know that that's what makes it look like an ornament, but for me, I'm using these more in an abstract way, so I don't need them to hang like an ornament, so I don't particularly care if I lose those colors. Kind of an alternate or striping type of pattern, I would say that, so rather than try to create like an every other, if you're using a couple different colors and you want to create kind of like a striping or candy cane effect with your garland, I would actually create 2 strands of the solid color, or, you know, the red colors and the green colors, or the whatever you're using, and then twist them together almost like DNA in a spiral, rather than try to methodically alternate. I just think that what you'll see once we attach it to something, the pattern and placement sort of changes as it compresses. Back to building a support. So the outside of my house last year, I used flexible electrical tubing, conduit, and garlands as my main support structure. And the garlands are wired because they're faux, tinsel, what have you. And so I'm using them on an additional support using just zip ties. And then that lets me create a very organic shapes. This is like a pretty common question around this project. And it really does require that you kind of experiment and practice. The very, very large ornaments are really challenging. And so making your support really as solid as you can and giving yourself many, many anchor points to, like, it's finding the balance between the projections off of the surface that you've attached to, and because I think most designers want to make it look magical, so fewer connection points really gives it that look that it's floating. But you need solid support. Like, I had a lot of anchor screws and attachment points into the house. Don't tell Tim. We had just gotten it painted. And so that allowed me, you need a lot of surface. Like, and when I say a large ornament, I mean like this guy. And I have larger. They are the right scale for outside. They are probably a little large for this, but we'll see. And I removed most of the tops from these because, again, I'm sort of attaching them so that you're only really seeing this. I don't really care about seeing the collar. The weight of these is going to require that you, I wired and zip tied these. So I would say anything really over maybe like 6 or 8 inch. Anything really over this size, you want to wire separately. Someone on Instagram asked if you could do this with chicken wire as your support. And you could make yourself like a cylinder, a flexible cylinder of wire. I would just recommend that you use the coated green chicken wire because the finish on these is already not as durable as like a glass or a paint. It's some kind of paint tint, and it can chip pretty easily just from this moving them around and letting them bang into each other. So I would say if you're going to attach them to chicken wire, I would use the green coated and do your best to maybe make sure that they're not scraping up against it. So I'm just going to continue threading ornaments on, not paying too much attention to how close they are. You don't want to string every single one of your ornaments at one time. You want to have a few left to do individually to fill in any gaps, or possibly just towards the end you can just glue or glue dot them into place. But I really liked the interpretation of that kind of balloon constellation in ornament form. And we have a 3-story old colonial house here in Philadelphia, and the original idea was, could I make the giant balloons blowing out of our chimney? But for many reasons, balloons would not be a great idea against a stone house. I doubt that the balloons would last the whole season. But as far as I know, the only really, really giant ornaments are extremely expensive. I have this photo from outside an office building somewhere in New York that I was teasing my client, like, oh, should we get these for the Christmas tree project? But I think they're probably custom made. Alright, so I have some extras for hole filling. I'm not going to make anything too big with this, but depending on, we'll just attach this right then. Depending on how big of a piece you're doing, I think your size of your finished piece is going to really be dependent on the number of ornaments you're interested in trying to collect, because the size of these things are big, and this is actually the smallest container I have of them. Most of the containers are like this big. And the really, really big ornaments don't even fit in that. I put them in a mattress bag, and then we just kind of shove them into our attic over our garage. So you do have to store this stuff if you plan on using it again. All right. This is an appliance whip. There's also electrical conduit that is, appliance whip is pre-wired. So it already has some wire support inside it, and it's this kind of flexible, you can see it holds its shape really well. They're reusable, so I use them for all kinds of stuff, but you can see. So if we were going to attach to this, and when I first tried, I wired every single individual one on, and I was like, uh-oh, I'm not gonna have enough ornaments. And I could not buy more. I had already, 1,800, 2,000, already bought a lot. So that's when I came up with this twisting and kind of using the excess wire in between to use fewer ornaments. And that way you can kind of, you don't have to have, it was making this massive ornament garland, which I suppose would be really cool. It just was not an efficient use of the ornaments. So you could attach this to faux garland, real garland. I'm gonna grab a couple pieces of, all right, so I've got some pretty solid pieces of cedar. And so this is an example of how you can use almost anything as long as it's solid enough not to flex too much. And you really wrap the wire tightly. That's going to prevent the ornaments from sagging and drooping, which when a friend of mine attempted this last year, that was what she ran into. The ornaments just really needed, they just needed more winding. And I think how I'm going to use this, I think we can get away with the zip tie. We'll see. So rather than start at the end, this is where I think keeping it together as a continuous link. And the other thing that helps tighten, because we linked them the way that we did, is just kind of twisting. It helps sort of shrink up that wire. So that's why using the really thin, flexible wire, you want to make sure you wind in the same direction. All the work that I had done. You could definitely use green wire too. I would just make sure you use really thin wire. This wire that I'm using, that I typically use for wreath making is 22 gauge. I would use maybe a slightly thinner wire so you get that flexibility. Let's see, this does not say what gauge it is, but I can tell it's definitely thinner and more flexible. So I just kind of wound my way up and down this one branch of cedar, and I'm going to make another small section and put it on this piece, and then I can just continue to tighten up my wires. Now, if you wanted this to be very straight and rigid and solid, you would just go around the whole clump of cedar rather than this one kind of wispy draping branch that I did. And so I might do that on fast forward just so we can keep things going along here. To kind of tighten up the cedar as well. Just winding it around. And you'll see. So if you've ever done anything with balloons, hopefully you can see that it's sort of a similar technique in that I'm just kind of winding my ornament wire through and sort of using the second string to kind of weave in between the first set, and any gaps you just go back and add a few more ornaments to. This is also why I said you don't have to worry about trying to make them perfect by alternating your colors, because they sort of end up all over if you want them through. Weaving back and forth there, and any that are showing like a little, like this guy's got a little bit of a spot, you can just kind of position that so you can't see it. And I know that we titled this Ornament Garland, but I think I'm actually going to leave it as like kind of a swag, or like you could use this even as like a centerpiece. I'm just going to fill in a couple more ornaments through here, and I will show you guys how to do that, and then I think we can call this done. Now that we have the structure, I'm just going to take a piece of wire and kind of weave it in. And this is where I know my dad was saying he couldn't really see what I was doing. So let me try to find the best angle for it. Okay. Okay, so these two wires are very soundly in place. And rather than try to keep folding the ornament back on itself, I'm just gonna pinch and twist, and it's just gonna tighten. It's gonna, basically it's like winding anything up. It's just gonna wind up that piece of wire. I wish I had one more red, but I think I had discarded this one because it was losing its finish, and I think that's too focal of a place to put it. So, more olive. I mean, this would be kind of funny. I don't think I really have any. Well, that actually looks kind of cool to finish off the end, but I definitely think it's too to go there. So same thing, just kind of holding the loose end and twisting and twisting and tucking. And just taking a look. The other thing you can do is kind of use this way, like using something wispy like cedar, because then you can tuck little pieces in. We don't want to cover up all that work, so if I'm sticking cedar in just to cover up a little bit of wire, I'm gonna pull it through. So if you weren't using the greenery, you would just continue adding. I would save maybe the smallest ornaments for your last hole filling. Alright guys, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed watching me make an ornament piece. If you want to see where this ends up, you want to be sure to subscribe to my channel. And if you want to share your holiday decor with me, please tag me on Instagram. It's at Sullivan_Owen. I would love to see what you guys get up to. Thanks for watching. See you next time.